A threatened port strike from Boston to Houston could put a lot of cargo in limbo. About 40% of all imports into the U.S., in fact. It could happen as early as Sunday, and in our cover story, that could leave spring merchandise sitting on the high seas instead of store shelves. Nearly 15,000 longshoremen may go on strike Sunday if negotiators with commercial cargo shippers cannot reach agreement on a new 6-year contract. And there is some hope both sides agree to resume talks before an extended December 29th deadline. But if the talks fail, would the fiscal cliff and a port strike be a 1-2 punch to the economy?
If it's a couple days, I think ultimately it would be somewhat of a blip in the recovery. If we're talking 2 weeks, something like that, then it really becomes a much greater problem.
A key sticking point involves a fee longshoremen receive for each container that arrives in port. The container royalty fee was invented to help offset the need for fewer workers during the transition from bulk cargo to containers in the 1950s and 60s. Shippers want the fee limited, longshoremen disagree.
We're talking about $15,000 per longshoreman, and it's, I think, a total aggregate estimate of approximately $200 million on an annualized basis, and it's hard to imagine that would not have an impact on cost of goods. That is a very significant number.
If there's no compromise, a strike could leave goods headed for ports from Boston to Houston at sea, and retailers with a headache.
If you have a container ship coming into the East Coast port and it's delayed for a couple weeks, what do you do with that? I mean, do you divert it back to the West Coast? That's a very, very expensive option.
And presidential intervention, unlikely.
I don't think President Obama is going to get involved. It would be rather startling if he did. This would certainly be seen as a betrayal by organized labor.
Speaking of large travelers across oceans, ship traffic off California will be redirected next year to protect endangered whales which migrate along the coast. 5 whales died from collisions with ships in 2010. Now, with support from the shipping industry, the changes will affect shipping lanes between San Francisco and LA.